All right, we are live. Let's start. Hi, everyone. Okay, you'll want to listen to this video before starting couples therapy with your husband or partner for a relationship crisis. Now, I'm not against couples therapy. There are a lot of women who work with me who are either going to couples therapy, who have started couples therapy, and I even have clients with me now who are also doing couples therapy at the same time as coaching. So I am definitely not against it. I have no bias towards coaching versus couples therapy. I think they are different and complementary. But full disclosure, my husband and I never did couples therapy when we went through a relationship crisis. And I'm going to share with you what I learned from that because I think it's going to be super important for you. And I think it's going to be important for you whether or not you are headed into couples therapy or even if your husband or boyfriend refuses to go to couples therapy. I'm going to be totally honest and transparent here. My husband, then boyfriend, and I never did couples therapy when we went through our relationship crisis. And I don't say this to blame or shame him. Like, I think it's awesome. Like, I'm ecstatic that we didn't do it because I got to learn what I learned, and I'm going to share with you what that is today. And I think it's going to be super helpful. And I share this with you because I know a lot of you are going to be in the same situation. So I want you to know that you are not alone, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end of your relationship because your man doesn't want to go to therapy, or maybe it's not working so well. Maybe in couples therapy right now, it's not progressing the way you desire it to. And that doesn't mean that you can't have your happily ever after. So I'm actually really excited to share with you guys today. And first, it's important that you know that even though we didn't go to couples therapy, I paid and hired someone for support to help me in my own love life and through our own relationship crisis. So it's not like I tried doing this alone, like I see a lot of women do, which is fine in the beginning. But if things aren't working out, I highly encourage you to look at what else you could be doing to help you guys in your relationship crisis, right? Whatever's going on in your relationship. Like, I tried doing it alone for like 6 years. And I'm not saying it was bad the whole 6 years, right? Our crisis wasn't that whole time, but now I can see what was leading up to that. And I wish I had known this earlier so I could have prevented things from going the way they happened, right? And it just got worse and worse because of that. It's like, if you think about it, right? It's like if you want to do some renovations in your house and you're like, okay, I'm going to try doing it myself, but you have like no skill or expertise, right? And that's great that you're trying to do it yourself. You have great intentions, but oftentimes what can happen is you're just creating more problems for yourself to fix down the road, right? You end up finally having to hire a contractor to fix and undo all the work that you've done. And it just ends up taking more time. It just ends up costing you more money down the line because they basically have to start over, right? Or you have to like start again. And it takes you back more than if you had just hired the contractor in the first place. Like, I wish I would have known back then what my options were. So in fairness, I just didn't know what was available to me in terms of what I could do to make things right in my relationship and what kind of support was out there for me. But anyways, it all happened for a reason. So I have zero regrets, and I will share with you guys today what came out of that. So even though I went through that, here's what happened. Here's what I learned from not going to couples therapy and what you can apply to your situation. Like I said, whether you guys decide to go, whether you guys are in therapy, or if you're in the same situation where your man doesn't want to go, because that's very common. So don't despair because of that. And the first thing I want to share in terms of what I learned is because we didn't go to couples therapy together, there was no keeping tabs, right? So I talk to a lot of women, right? And they might be in couple therapy or trying to do the work together with their partner because obviously you're in a relationship. You guys are both involved in the dynamic. Theoretically, it makes sense. You guys should be equally invested in fixing things. And theoretically, we think that we need to both approach fixing the relationship in the same way. But because we weren't doing couples therapy, I did not have that attachment to my husband, to my boyfriend at the time. I wasn't keeping tabs to see if he was doing everything, like I was doing, right? That he was putting equal work into what we got assigned from our therapist, right? I wasn't keeping tabs which could cause frustration, right? If you see that your partner doesn't seem as invested in it, then that can hinder your own mindset and your own progress and just add more to the negative emotions that might already be in your relationship, adding to that resentment, etc. Also, because of that, I had no expectations, right? Because we weren't in couples therapy together, I didn't have, and this is similar, right? This expectation that he would, you know, do all the work and like I said, kind of this is the same idea, right? Contribute equally. I didn't have this sense of expectation that, again, if I saw the expectation, my expectations weren't met, that could bring me back into more of a negative state and just hinder, again, the progress that we're trying to make together. And finally, because he wasn't there, I had no excuses again. So if I saw my man wasn't putting as much effort into it, again, I didn't have an excuse to say, well, this doesn't work, or it's hopeless, or he's never going to change, because I didn't have that expectation. It wasn't giving me that excuse where I could look at it from that way. And having the mindset is huge, I have to say. I'm always talking about the skills, but at the end of the day, it's your mindset that's even beyond the skills. So what you're saying to yourself, what you're thinking. And when you have that other person there, it's a lot easier to mess with your mindset because you're reacting to something. So when we decided not to do couples therapy, or when we didn't do couples therapy, right, because we weren't both on board, it really forced me to just look at myself, to look only at me and what I was doing and how well I was implementing the skills and how much I was doing the work with the support that I got through my relationship crisis. It really focused, it removed that external factor that could mess with my head. So really, I was there doing the work, staying in my own lane. And I'm not saying I completely ignored my husband, right? Like I would look, but that wasn't my focus. There wasn't that whole aspect to it that tripped me up, that where we're doing this together, and he has to do this much and I have to do this much, and we were both assigned this to do and I'm doing more of it. And then there's that comparison, like I said, and that keeping tabs and that judgment that can get really tricky. And that's fine. There are a lot of successful people who do couples therapy, and there's a huge amount of value. I encourage you to do it. But at the same time, that's what I'm sharing. That's why I'm sharing this with you, because the more you can remove that mindset, the more it's going to help you be successful if you go that route. And it's also to show you that if you don't go that route, there's still things that you can do, right? Like I still managed to do this by being the lead in the relationship, in acquiring the skills and getting that sort of help. And I did a video a while ago. No, I think I just did a short. I should do a video on this. A lot of people have done videos on this, right? Mel Robbins did one recently about relationships aren't really 50-50. And we have this idea in our society nowadays, because we're all about, making things equals, which is awesome. But in relationships, sometimes there is more flexibility, and we're not always 50-50 at the exact same time. And that also plays out kind of what I see when I work with women who are struggling. There's still that 50-50 expectation. And the more flexibility we can have with this, and the more we can be comfortable being back in our power and taking as much responsibility as we have to make things better in our love life, the better the result is going to be, right? And one of the questions that comes up a lot for me when I share this actually with women is they say, well, didn't that make you mad? Like, didn't that frustrate you? Because sometimes it did seem like, hey, I feel like I'm doing all the heavy lifting. And it didn't make me mad, because at the same time as I adopted this mindset, I got really into this whole idea of women empowerment and taking back my power. And to me, I didn't care. I got to the point where, and I share this, where I feel like we hit rock bottom in our relationship. So at that point, I didn't even care anymore. At that point, it was just all about me taking my power back in my love life, because that's an area of my life that was always important to me. To me, it was a huge value of mine to live my life with a partner and have a beautiful relationship and have all these experiences together. So I was going to get that no matter what, whether or not my husband in this situation was going to go to couples therapy or not. It didn't make me mad, because to me, because I was in my own lane, like I said, no matter what happened, I was going to keep going. I was going to keep making myself a better partner. I was going to acquire the relationship skills, whether he reciprocated or not, whether or not his mirror neurons caught on and monkey see, monkey do kicked in, and he kind of followed suit with what I was doing. I really detached, like I said, from him in this whole equation. And it's not to be insensitive, might sound like it's not very caring for me to say something like this, but at the end of the day, I think that was one of the most powerful things that happened because I started really leading by example instead of leading by expectation or leading by trying to force him to do something that he wasn't into, like doing it a way that because at the end of the day, he didn't want to go to couples therapy. He felt like we should figure this out ourselves. These are things we should be talking about, not with some third person. And I know that's valuable, and I think that's valuable. But in his mind, from his perspective, he really wanted us to kind of do this together. But the thing is, we didn't have the tools. So in fairness, like I had to get support because we needed someone to give us the tools. And then when I acquired those tools and I started implementing it, that's when the magic happened. So the other thing I wanted to share about what I learned is one of the great things about me having, us not going to couples therapy and me taking the approach that I took and working with my own support, my own coach, therapist / support, was that it forced me to be brave. It forced me to be courageous because like I said, right, I didn't know what was going to happen and I didn't know if he was going to reciprocate. I didn't know if this would make worse, right? A lot of times women are scared to implement these skills because, they're scared it might create an argument. And then maybe that's going to be the end of the relationship or that's going to make things worse. And there's a lot of fear that holds us back in making things better, ironically, because there's the fear that things are actually going to get worse instead. So this really forced me to push through that fear and do it anyways. And like I said, I was at the rock bottom, like what I consider my rock bottom, where at that point I was like, do you know what? It probably can't get any worse than this. Like I might as well try new skills and I might as well implement them and keep doing them. Even if I'm not seeing the benefits right away, I might as well just keep getting really, really good at communicating with a man, right? Regardless of how he responds and what happens to a relationship. I might as well get really good at understanding what his triggers are, understanding what his motivations are. I might as well, regardless of what happens, it's going to benefit me in the long run, no matter what. So I saw no downside to it. And the last thing I learned and I wanted to share with you, and I already kind of talked about it in the beginning, was this whole idea that there is hope. Like doing self-development and seeing a therapist, getting help. And this is very general. I'm generalizing here and it might sound sexist, but it's been said that that's a very feminine energy trait. It's more common for, actually they have a stat on this, right? It's 80% of the time it's women who bring up relationship issues in the relationship. It's usually women who identify these problems. And so a lot of times it might feel like it's on us to fix it, but that's a great thing, right? So I'm sharing that with you so that it's not alone. You're not alone. And just from my example, I hope it helps you see that even if you feel like this is an area of your relationship where you have to take maybe a little bit more action in leadership, there's still hope. You can still get your happily ever after, and it's not hopeless if he doesn't want to go to therapy, if you can't convince him. And I would encourage you not to push therapy on your husband if he's not open to it. I would highly encourage you not to throw out any ultimatums, any threats when it comes to that. I think your best bet, if he doesn't just open up to the idea right away, or if he's not the one that suggests it, I highly recommend you to back off when it comes to that and really start focusing on yourself. And I don't mean just self-care like bubble baths and doing stuff for yourself, like from that perspective, but focusing on yourself in terms of how strong are your relationship skills? How strong are your communication skills? How high or how advanced is your emotional intelligence? And sometimes, and from my experience, 100% of the time, 110% of the time for myself, working on that was enough to change the whole dynamic in our relationship and to get us to a point, like I share, where it's even better now than in the honeymoon phase. Because in the honeymoon phase, at the beginning of our relationship, like everything was new, everything was exciting, and we just, things were going good because of that. It wasn't because there was skill involved. It wasn't because there was emotional mastery. It was because it's the beginning of the relationship and we have no life challenges at that point and things are just easy and happy. Whereas now we have the tools and we have the experience and we have the mindset to keep things honeymoon style, honeymoon phase-ish, even when there are life challenging. So I think that's like a million times more valuable than going back to that honeymoon phase. You're better off keeping that honeymoon phase with the day-to-day life, with those skills and the tools that you need to keep things strong. So I want to end this off by saying it doesn't mean that because you're going to couples therapy, you can't develop or adopt this way of thinking. Like I said, even if you're doing couples therapy, I highly encourage you to look at the mindset I just shared with you, right? Look at that approach. No matter what you or the both of you, right, decide to do, I really think it's important for you to remove the focus from him and to really all just put it back on yourself. Really start taking that power back and keep it towards you at all time. And I mean, that's not saying you ignore everything he does. You can take objective, constructive feedback from his reactions, but as soon as it starts messing with your emotions and it starts messing with your head, that's when, you know, it's a slippery slope. That's when it can start further messing with your love life. So just be very, very careful. Every time you kind of look at what he did and start judging it and evaluating it, stop yourself. Break that cycle in your head, just change the subject, self-talk, go out for a run, do something to just get you, not let yourself go down that slope. All right, this is what you need to know before starting couples therapy or for just a relationship crisis, how to get through it. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments below and I will see you guys next time. Bye for now.